Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. This week we're going to be talking about water gardens, and we'd like to thank Jen from Everyday Old House for giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And Jen's website has tips and information about old homes. She owns an American Foursquare style home that's over 100 years old, and she has a lot of great tips. You can check it out at everydayoldhouse.com. Our new book is going to be released sometime this month, and we'll let you know when we have a definite date. There are hieroglyphics in Egypt of water gardens that date back to around 2800 BC, and they're filled with fish, ducks, lotus flowers, and surrounded by landscape plants. The ancient Persians and Greeks had water gardens. The Japanese and Chinese created water gardens for contemplation and meditation, and they started adding koi a few hundred years ago. Having a water garden with koi was believed to attract good luck and represent prosperity, success, and longevity.
What is koi?
Koi is a type of carp, and,
how would I know that?
And they were bred to be very attractive. A lot of interesting colors. Some species of koi can live 200 years.
Wow.
Amazing, huh?
Mm-hmm.
A water garden can add a unique look to the landscaping around your home, and there's some research that says...
So, water garden, it's a pond, right?
Yeah, it can be a pond that you dig out into the yard, or you can just have a pot that has...
That's considered a water garden?
Yeah, oh yeah.
A pot?
A big pot filled with water and plants. And if it's big enough, you can have some fish in there. How cool is that? There's research that says if you add a fountain or a waterfall element to your water garden or pot, it can be healthy because falling water releases negative ions into the air. A Columbia University study found that some people with chronic depression were helped when exposed to negative ions. The Center for Applied Cognitive Sciences found negative ions can increase the flow of oxygen to the brain and increase alertness in some people. And the Living Well Cancer Resource Center added water gardens to their facility because they found them to be beneficial for relieving stress. Container water garden bowls are good for a patio or a deck, and with these water bowls, you're generally going to have 2 or 3 water plants that are in pots inside the bowl in the water, and then you'll have a couple of floating plants. Many of the decorative container water garden bowls are going to have a notched area on the top so you can run electric to a fountain kit, and that way you can have the sound and look of water moving. There's also pitcher or faucet attachments that set on the side and that pours water into the bowl, and you'd be using a pump for that. You can also get LED lights that can be put into the water to add some color. I stopped by the home centers here in the Chicago area, and they have black plastic water pots that can be set inside something decorative. So you can have a barrel or a pot that you can set this into, or you can build around this pot with landscape bricks to match a patio, or just make it look more substantial. And some of these pots had raised areas or shelves for plants that can't be submerged too deep.
Okay.
For a water garden in your lawn or your landscape area, you can get rigid liners in a range of shapes and sizes. The styles I saw here ranged from 30 gallons to 275 gallons, and from 12 inches to 18 inches deep. A couple of them were roughly 75 by 55 inches wide and long to 90 inches by 66 inches. And these are pretty easy to install. You just dig a hole to fit, you put down some sand and drop it in. And if you want to create your own shape and size, you can get a flexible waterproof pond liner. You just drape this over the hole you dig into your lawn. And with these larger water gardens, you can add goldfish or koi. When you're planning the location of your water garden, the Department of Natural Resources recommended that you check if there's any restrictions in your town. The pond may have to be set back a certain distance from the property line, or you may have to put a fence around your yard to prevent kids or people from accidentally falling in. In some communities, ponds deeper than 18 inches are classified as a pool, so you might need to get a permit. Most of the water plants need at least 5 to 6 hours of direct sunlight a day, and you generally don't want to be under trees that lose their leaves in the fall. You wouldn't want to place your liner in an area that gets water runoff during a storm, or put a rigid liner over very boggy soil that could shift and crack it. For most water gardens, you'll want to have access to electric for pumps, filters, and aerators for fish. If you plan on running electric underground, and before you dig up the lawn for your liner, call 811 in the U.S. before you dig, and a crew will come out and mark the location of any underground utilities.
And that's free, right?
Yeah, there's no cost, which is amazing. And
so that's what free means?
Check. And this usually takes a few days, so you should plan ahead. And think about the placement in relation to a deck or windows from your home so you can maximize the view. Also plan for sitting areas and pathways around it. Rigid pond liners are popular for your first water garden, so you can start out small and see if you like it. You know the exact shape, it's easy to install and repair. The disadvantage is there usually isn't a large selection at home centers. The sizes of the shelves are going to be more limited, and it can be difficult to get to your house. Once you pick the spot in your lawn and a rigid liner, flip the liner upside down and mark the outline of the liner on the ground. Then
mark it with what?
You can either mark it with stakes, you can drag a shovel all the way around it, you can use upside down shooting spray paint. They've got like landscape marking paint that you can use. So once you have the outside dimensions, I would flip it right side up, and the lowest portion, I would mark that also, and that's going to give you a nice reference when you're digging this. On many liners, you're going to have different heights and shelves for staging your plants and stones. You want to dig down about 2 inches deeper and wider for each area, and then level the bottom where the main base is going to be setting. You want to fit it in several times, adjust the height. You want to add about 2 inches of sand on the bottom and then tamp it down. Make sure you check it with a level. You can run a 2x4 across the top edge of the liner and set your level on that. 2 inches of sand under a rigid liner is going to help prevent it from getting damaged from rocks, roots, or building debris that could be in the ground as the weight of the water pushes down on the liner. Water weighs a little over 8 pounds a gallon, so you want to make sure that it's setting flat, there's no wobble. I spoke to Sakrete, it's Sakrete. They have a multi-purpose sand that tamps down well. They say by lightly spraying sand with a hose while you're working on it and then use a tamper, it's going to pack down better. And when you're packing sand along the sides of your liner, spray it with a hose, and that's going to help it settle down. Most sand is made from quartz and other rock. Sakrete suggests when working with sand or gravel to wear an N95 dust mask, goggles, and gloves to protect against crystalline silica that's being released into the air. Also, wetting it down is going to help reduce the dust. Some top-rated dust masks come from 3M, Amston, it's Amston, and Soft Seal, it's capital SOFT, capital SEAL, and look for NIOSH certified.
What's NIOSH?
The National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And to be certified, it has to be a minimum of 95% filtering for their dust masks.
Okay.
Pointed long-handled shovels cut through grass and roots better than a square point shovel, but square point shovels go into hard-packed soil better. It's wild, isn't it? And they're also better for scooping the soil out flatter for the higher parts or the shelves on rigid pull liners. Fiskars, Fiskars, True Temper, Bully Tools, and Root Assassin all have top-rated shovels. If you plan on creating your own design and you'll be using a flexible liner, you should check out the sizes available before you start. If you're going to have fish, you need to have about a 2-foot depth in warm climates and 3 feet or deeper in colder climates, especially if you don't plan on bringing them in for winter.
The fish?
Sure, you wouldn't want them to freeze in a cold climate. You're in Minnesota and you've got your water pond. You bring your goldfish in for winter.
Where do you put them?
in a goldfish bowl. According to the Goldfish Tank, one goldfish should have 20 to 30 gallons of room, then add at least 10 gallons for each additional goldfish in a pond. Goldfish in the
water. Bring them all inside.
Right, yeah, we need a bigger aquarium. Goldfish in the wild can grow to the size of a football and live 10 to 20 years.
Wow.
The oldest recorded goldfish was 43. Researchers say goldfish...
Do you believe that?
Sure, of course. I saw it on the internet. Researchers say goldfish are pretty smart. They can be trained to play fetch, push levers, and play soccer. Create a layout on how you want your pond to look. Plan for different heights for a variety of plants. And if you research the plants ahead of time and know what you can purchase in your area, it's going to help you with a tiered design. That way you can have the shelves at the best depths. A common plan has 3 depths, with the center 24 inches or deeper, a step up around 18 inches, and a top shelf area around 12 inches deep. And then you can set overturned clay pots or landscape bricks on those shelves and add height if you need it for plants that can't be submerged too deep. For larger ponds, plan on an area for a filter and a skimmer. You can have a waterfall tank, and this can be built up into a higher area, and that's going to add sound and water movement. Some of these have built-in filters.
Okay.
When you're building a pond using a flexible liner, you can use the dirt that you're digging out to shape the area around your water garden. So think about the overall design with plants and stones that'll be around the pond.
So this isn't a project that you're doing on a whim.
No, yeah, there should be a lot of planning on paper. You can use a hose or a rope to lay out the design. You can use landscape spray paint to mark the ground for the shape or pound stakes around the perimeter. If you're going to have fish go large, it's going to be easier to maintain and you're going to have more room to add a variety of plants and actually see the fish. Once you've dug out the pond, you can add an inch or 2 of sand to help protect the liner from anything sharp or abrasive. Then many gardeners recommend a pond underlayment or a puncture-resistant geotextile underlayment to protect the liner. In stores I looked at, they carried EPDM, PVC, and HDPE flexible pond liners.
That was a lot of letters.
PVC is the least expensive. It's safe for plants and fish. It should last more than 10 years, but it's not as durable in areas that freeze. HDPE is a type of plastic. It has a longer life. They say around 20 years, but it's not as flexible, so it's harder to install if you're in a cold climate or if you're installing it in the cold. EPDM is a type of rubber, and this is popular with professional installers. A few articles I read said this type of liner should last over 30 years. It flexes and stretches with changes in temperature, and make sure you're getting EPDM pond liners, not a roofing liner. The pond liner is going to be safe for fish and plants. When you're positioning the liner in your hole, try to minimize the folds, but you're going to have some wrinkles and overlap. Extend the liner around 12 inches or so beyond the top edge of the pond. And when you're digging, remove the grass and level the area for the liner, so outside the pond. You can use a few decorative stones around the pond to hold the liner in place once you've laid it in. Many designers use large stones and decorative pebbles to hide the black top edge of the liner and the liner going down the sides of the pond. There's a product called Rock on a Roll. It's a flexible material that covers the exposed flexible or rigid pond liner. So this isn't a waterproof liner. It hides your liner. It's 34 inches wide and it comes in rolls from 8 to 40 feet long. It's UV resistant to help protect your liner. It's submersible and it's safe for plants and fish. And it looks like stone. So it comes in 3 color combinations. It folds over the liner to give it a more natural decorative look. You can also use it to cover skimmers, filters, and hose. It's much easier than landscape rock or boulders, or you can use it along with other landscape material. And you can use it all along the top edge and down into the pond. So it's pretty interesting. And it's at rockonaroll.com. And it's actually rock-on-a-roll.com. You want to add gravel 1 inch or smaller to the shelves and the bottom of the pond for a decorative look, and it's also going to help establish and maintain beneficial bacteria. Goldfish will suck up small gravel and spit it out while they're looking for food. There are bottles of bacteria you can get at your garden or a home center to add to a new pond to establish bacteria quickly. The bacteria is going to help break down organic debris, remove excess nutrients and ammonia from fish waste. You want a pump and a filter sized to your pond. That's going to help keep it clean and healthy for your fish and your plants. Waterfalls need a pump strong enough to push water up to its height, so make sure you check the capacity. And a waterfall or fountain is going to add oxygen to the water for your plants and your fish. You can get an underwater aerator to add more oxygen if you don't want moving water, or in a large pond, a waterfall or a fountain may not create enough oxygen.
Okay.
Your pump and filter system should always be running, although most pumps aren't designed for areas that freeze. So in a cold climate or during winter, you can store your pump and run an aerator system for the plants and your fish. For areas that freeze, if you're keeping the fish in a deep pond, you can add a de-icer, and that's going to keep a hole open in the water and allow toxic gas out. When you're setting up your pump and filter, you can also add decorative underwater LED lights. I spoke to Leviton. It's Leviton, and they say you need to have a GFCI protected circuit for your outdoor outlets. So if you don't have a GFCI breaker or a GFCI outlet upstream from the outlet you're using, you should install a WR GFCI and an in-use cover.
So weather resistant.
Right. And match the GFCI to your breaker or fuse, so it's either going to be 15 or 20 amp. When you're adding your water, a drinking water safe garden hose will help protect the fish and plants. And if you have kids that help with chores while you're gardening, it's going to be safer for them. Some companies that have drinking water safe garden hoses are Apex, it's APEX, Ely, ELEY, and Flexzilla, FLEXZILLA. When you're picking plants, the University of Illinois Extension says there's 3 main types for a water garden. For the shallow area, plants are called emergent, marginal, or bog. And they say check the recommended depth. It could be anywhere from 3 to 12 inches deep, and you'll be adjusting that height on a shelf with pots or stone under the water garden pot that you have the plants in. Submerged plants are plants that stay underwater, and they're helping provide oxygen for other plants and fish. They're helping control algae growth. Floaters float on or just below the surface. Some are rooted in a pot, and the top is floating, or the whole plant could be floating.
So you're putting the pot in the pond?
Yes. So you're going to have a special water garden pot that has holes in it, or it could be like a mesh. And they don't want you to use amended soil or potting soil, like for potted plants. Mm-hmm. You want to use a heavy garden or clay soil, and then you're putting gravel on top of the soil to minimize the soil moving out of the pots. And that's going to help control the growth, too. So if it's in a pot,
right,
it's going to stay smaller. They recommend only covering about 50% of the water surface with plants, no more than 60%, and then trim and control the plant growth. One water gardener suggested for each square meter of pond surface area, roughly 10 square feet, you should have 1 rooted floating plant, 3 oxygenating plants, and 2 marginal plants. You should check the fertilizer recommended for your plants and do not over-fertilize. If you're feeding fish, make sure you're not overfeeding them. Fish will eat mosquito larvae, so that's one concern I saw a lot about ponds. But if you don't have fish in your water garden, mosquito dunks are a bacteria that kills only the mosquito larvae, so it's safe in your pond for fish and plants, and it's safe around people. You should clean your filters regularly, remove dead leaves and plants regularly, remove dead fish if you see them, and talk to your garden or home center about algicide and chlorine removers for your area.
Okay.
If you're in a cold climate, research the plants by checking the hardiness zone for your area. Some plants may need to be replaced every year. Remove dead plants each year. Some can be brought inside in pots during winter. I know you'd like that. And bring your fish in too. Fish will reduce their activity in the winter. They're not going to need as much food. Keep leaves and debris out of your water garden. If it only freezes occasionally, keep your pumps running. If it gets down to freezing a lot or you get a hard freeze, turn off and remove your pump and filter. Check the recommended maintenance. Use a floating de-icer to keep an opening on the surface of your pond, and have an aerator for your fish and plants.
Do you have to feed the fish?
Sure.
What?
Fish food. You can get... I looked at a couple of the home centers here. They had water pond fish food.
So when do you bring them inside to get different food?
No, keep them on the same diet.
Do you have anything else to add?
You should take the time to plan a project like this before you start.
You think?
If you have the right balance of plants, fish, and filtering, they all work together to make maintaining a water garden pretty easy. We're going to let you know when we'll be releasing our 8th ebook. It should be out in the next couple of weeks on Amazon.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Himalaya, or your favorite podcast app.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can download our ebooks, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, books 1 through 7 on Amazon.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow Cindy on Twitter @FixItCohost, and you can follow us on Instagram, Fix It Home Improvement.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.